Under the hum of recycled air and the faint crackle of static from the comms panel, I found myself talking to the ceiling again. It wasn't that the ceiling was a good conversationalist, far from it, but when you're stationed on Orbital Outpost Kappa 7, with nothing but rusting consoles, flickering holoscreens, and an occasional glitchy cleaning drone for company, you take what you can get. I leaned back in the chair, boots propped against the console, and sighed in a voice that was supposed to sound joking but came out more desperate than I liked. What I need, I muttered, is a wife. Someone to cook actual food instead of vacuum-packed protein bricks. Someone who won't short-circuit halfway through mopping. Someone who laughs at my jokes. The ceiling didn't laugh. It never did. Still, my words hung in the recycled air, and I imagined, for just a moment, some great cosmic bureaucracy up there scribbling notes. The Department of Careless Wishes, filing me under pending. That thought made me chuckle, until the station's proximity alarms screamed. Now, alarms usually mean space junk, or maybe a courier shuttle that forgot to file its landing vector. But this time the display lit up with a crimson warning that scrolled in letters large enough for even a half-asleep technician to understand: unidentified vessel approaching. Trajectory, docking bay 2, ***. I scrambled upright, nearly choking on the half-eaten protein bar I'd been nursing. Command? I croaked into the comm, but the line was dead. Typical. Whenever something important happened, the comms decided to nap. The ship emerged from the void like a predator, sleek, silver-black hull scarred with battle burns, its wings folded inward like blades. No transponder. No clearance code. Definitely not on the delivery schedule. I pressed every security lock the console allowed and prayed the bay doors would hold. They didn't. With a hiss that rattled the walls, docking bay 2 opened, as if the station itself were rolling out a red carpet. When the inner doors slid apart, she walked in. At first glance, she looked human, tall, poised, dressed in armor that shimmered like liquid obsidian. But then the details sharpened. Her ears stretched long and pointed, twitching slightly with each sound. Her eyes glowed faintly crimson, as if backlit by some inner fire. A braid of jet black hair swung against her back, threaded with strands of silver wire that hummed with static. She moved like someone who had fought gravity itself and won. She stopped before me, and I realized two things at once. One, I was holding a wrench like a sword, and two, she was staring at me with the intensity of a missile lock. "You called," she said, her voice low, resonant, and terrifyingly calm. My mouth opened. Words fell out like loose screws. "I didn't call tech support, if that's what you mean. Unless you're here to fix the air scrubbers, in which case, great, but I really don't think you're." "You asked for a wife," she interrupted. Her gaze didn't waver. "I am she." I swear the silence that followed could have cracked hull plating. Somewhere behind us, a drone beeped twice and crashed into a wall. "Look," I managed after several painful seconds, "I was joking. People joke. It's a thing. Humans joke all the time. I wasn't filing an actual interstellar request form. There's not a, wait. There's not a cosmic dating service listening in on the station, is there? Because if so, I'd like to unsubscribe immediately." She tilted her head, ears twitching again. "You deny me?" Panic flared. "No. I mean, yes. I mean, hang on, you can't just drop out of hyperspace and propose marriage to the first idiot you meet. That's not how anything works." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, not quite a threat. "You underestimate the binding force of your words. Among my people, a vow spoken aloud beneath the open stars is law. You wished." I answered. I wanted to argue that technically we weren't under open stars, we were in a stuffy orbital tin can held together with duct tape, but her expression told me sarcasm wouldn't help. Instead, my survival instincts did what they always did, cracked a joke. "So, do you come with a warranty?" 30-day trial. Free shipping. Her eyes flickered. Was that amusement? Hard to tell when your potential vampire bride looked like she could tear apart bulkheads with her pinky finger. I come with blood and battle, she said. And loyalty. Until death. Oh, I said weakly. Well, that's romantic. In a terrifying, gladiatorial way. She took a step closer, and the air seemed to chill. My pulse hammered so hard I swore the console could pick it up as seismic activity. Yet beneath the fear, a bizarre part of me couldn't help but notice how surreal it all was. Last week, my greatest crisis was a jammed oxygen valve. Now I was apparently engaged to a vampiric war bride from beyond the stars. I cleared my throat. Listen. If we're doing this relationship thing, you should probably know a few things about humans. For instance, dinner usually involves food, not, each other. And singing together is called karaoke, not a pre-battle chant. And, personal space is. She leaned closer until her crimson eyes filled my vision. You will teach me. That wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration. Great, I croaked. Sure. Lessons in being human. Sign me up. Just, please don't eat the neighbors. A strange silence settled, the kind that buzzed with something dangerous and new. I realized then that the alarms had stopped blaring, the bay doors had sealed themselves, and the station was suddenly very, very quiet. Almost as if the universe were holding its breath. And me? I was just the fool who had made a careless joke, only to find the stars had taken me at my word. The first night with her on the station was not what I'd call restful. For one, she insisted on standing guard in the corner of my quarters as if I were some fragile emperor in need of protection. I tried explaining that the biggest threat to me was the vending unit running out of caffeine sachets, but she only gave me that unblinking crimson stare. Every time I rolled over in my bunk, I could feel her presence like a cold star at my back. By the time the artificial morning cycle kicked in, I'd slept maybe 10 minutes. Over breakfast, which consisted of the usual nutrient porridge with the texture of wet cardboard, she studied me like I was part of a combat drill. "This is your sustenance?" she asked, poking the porridge with a finger. The spoon hadn't been enough for her. No, she went in with her armored gauntlet like a surgeon. "That's food, yes," I said. "Don't judge. It's balanced, optimized, and guaranteed to keep a technician alive for 6 years. Which is not necessarily the compliment it sounds like." She brought her finger to her lips, tasted, and immediately scowled. "This is an insult to life." "Well," I said, "if you think that's bad, wait until you see the coffee." I demonstrated by pouring a packet of black sludge into a mug. It hissed faintly, as if it resented existing. She leaned in, eyes narrowing, then nodded. This is worthy of war." I wasn't sure if that was approval or a declaration of vengeance against the coffee manufacturer, but I decided not to push. By mid-cycle, the station had started whispering. Word travels fast when you suddenly acquire a guest who looks like she stepped out of a nightmare opera. The maintenance crew pretended not to stare as she walked past, her long braids swinging like a banner of conquest. One of the younger techs asked me if I'd ordered her online. I told him yes, the shipping was free if you clicked "accidental marriage" at checkout. She, of course, didn't understand the humor. Instead, she demanded to know the meaning of "online," which led to a 30-minute explanation about data networks, memes, and why humans voluntarily look at pictures of cats. When I showed her an archive of cat videos, she tilted her head and whispered, "These creatures rule you." I didn't have the heart to argue. Still, the strangeness of our situation refused to fade. At one point she followed me into the engineering bay, where I was repairing a faulty plasma regulator. She watched with rapt attention, her crimson eyes following every movement. Then, without warning, she took the wrench from my hands and adjusted the regulator with flawless precision. "How did you?" I began. My people build warships from the bones of dying stars, she said simply. This is no different. I couldn't argue with that. But I did mutter, show off, under my breath. She heard, of course. Her ears twitched, and a faint smile tugged at her lips. That was the first time I saw her smile. It was unsettling, but in a way that made my stomach twist in ways nutrient porridge never could. Later, while I tried to recalibrate the comms array, she asked questions, endless, sharp questions. Why do humans sing when afraid? Why do humans bury their dead in the ground instead of sending them into the stars? Why do humans sleep with their eyes closed, leaving themselves so vulnerable? I tried my best to answer, though most of the time my explanations sounded absurd when spoken aloud. We sing, I said once, because sometimes fear needs a melody. She tilted her head, clearly filing that away, and I worried she'd start belting out a battle hymn the next time someone sneezed. The tension between us softened as the hours passed. Once, when I nearly dropped a toolkit on my foot, she caught it midair with reflexes faster than gravity itself. I thanked her, and she looked almost offended. We are bound, she said. Your injuries are my dishonor. Right, I said. But if I stub my toe on the bunk, that's on me, okay? Don't duel the furniture. Her ears twitched again, the closest thing to laughter I'd seen from her. But beneath the humor, shadows stirred. Reports from the outer sectors started trickling in, ships vanishing near rift space, colonies going silent. The station commander briefed us with grim efficiency, though his eyes kept darting toward my unexpected companion. He didn't say it aloud, but everyone could feel it, her arrival was no coincidence. Something was coming. That night, as I tried to catch a few hours of rest, she finally spoke without her usual edge. You jest often, she said softly from the corner. It's kind of a survival tactic, I admitted. If I don't laugh, I'll probably scream. And screaming is less fun in enclosed spaces. She was silent for a moment. Then, to my utter disbelief, she said, teach me. Teach you what? Screaming. Jesting, she clarified, ears twitching. Laughter. If I am to live as your wife among your people, I must know this, survival tactic. I sat up, blinking at her silhouette against the dim light. A vampire war bride asking me for lessons in humor. Somewhere in the cosmos, the Department of Careless Wishes was laughing their heads off. Well, I said, rule one of humor, it's better when it's unexpected. Like, saying something ridiculous with a straight face. She considered. Then, in a perfectly flat voice, she said, I enjoy nutrient porridge. I stared. Then I laughed so hard I nearly fell out of bed. Her crimson eyes glowed faintly in the dark. And for the first time since she stepped onto the station, I wasn't just afraid. I was curious. Maybe even hopeful. And very, very worried about what the universe would throw at us next. The invasion began quietly, which felt unfair. You'd expect klaxons, screaming comms, maybe a dramatic countdown. Instead, the first sign was a ripple on the sensors, a disturbance in rift space like a rock dropped into water. By the time the station commander realized what was happening, the vampire fleet was already there, sleek ships shaped like blades of night, encircling our fragile tin can of a station. I was in the middle of showing her how to microwave popcorn. She'd been deeply fascinated by the concept of kernels exploding into fluff until the alarm cut through the air. She didn't flinch, but I nearly dumped the entire bag into the recycling chute. They've come for me, she said calmly, as if commenting on the weather. My clan does not tolerate desertion. Desertion? I sputtered. You married me after I made a sarcastic wish to the ceiling. That doesn't count as desertion, that counts as cosmic entrapment. She gave me that look again. The one that suggested humans really should read the fine print before speaking into the void. Then she put on her armor, each piece sliding into place with the finality of a locked airlock. The commander wanted to hand her over immediately. "We can't risk this station," he barked. "They want her, give them what they want." But she stood beside me, crimson eyes steady. "I have chosen," she said, voice like a blade. "Among my people, a vow under the stars is unbreakable. I am his." The commander's jaw dropped. I tried to help by adding, "Yeah, see? Intergalactic marital rights. She's got a point." He didn't laugh. Negotiations, if you could call them that, were a mess. The enemy flagship demanded blood tribute, demanded she return and fulfill her duties as war bride to the Empire. She refused, declaring herself bound to me. I, for my part, stood in the corner trying not to hyperventilate, occasionally offering helpful comments like, "Can we maybe solve this with a group hug?" Or, "Do vampires do rock paper scissors?" The fleets were seconds away from opening fire when she did something I'll never forget. She took my hand, lifted it like a standard, and spoke across the comms with absolute authority. "This union is witnessed by the stars themselves. To strike against him is to strike against me. To strike against me is to break our law." Silence followed. On the display, the enemy commanders shifted uneasily. I realized with dawning horror and amusement that we weren't in the middle of a war anymore, we were in the middle of a marital dispute. Across half a dozen warships, battle-hardened generals were suddenly arguing legal precedent about wedding vows. "Is this really happening?" I whispered. She didn't blink. "Yes. You are now the test case in interstellar matrimonial law." "Perfect," I muttered. I always wanted to be famous for my love life. Hours passed in tense debate. Plasma cannons charged, then cooled. At one point, I swear I heard someone on the enemy channel suggest calling their mother-in-law for guidance. Finally, after what felt like centuries, the fleet withdrew. Not defeated, not convinced, but bound by their own traditions. The truce was sealed not with weapons, but with bureaucracy. The commander stared at me afterward like I'd grown a second head. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded. "Yeah," I said, exhausted. "I just stopped an interstellar war with the power of marriage." "You're welcome." Life on the station changed after that. She wasn't just a terrifying stranger anymore, she was my partner. We argued over chores. She insisted the blood filter unit counted as my responsibility. I argued she should clean the plasma conduit since she could bench press them. We experimented with human rituals. She learned to make spaghetti, though she claimed the red sauce was too symbolic. She tried karaoke, and the entire station applauded out of sheer survival instinct. And me? I changed too. I stopped talking to the ceiling. I didn't need to. For the first time, I had someone listening, someone who challenged every joke and every fear with equal seriousness. I learned that laughter wasn't just survival, it was connection. I stopped thinking of myself as the lonely technician waiting for the universe to notice me. Somehow, impossibly, it had. One night, weeks after the fleet left, we stood by the viewport, the stars burning cold and endless. She was quiet, her hand brushing against mine. "Do you regret speaking that wish?" she asked softly. I thought about the alarms, the fear, the absurdity of standing trial in space court over a sarcastic marriage vow. And then I thought about the way she had smiled, however faintly, when I taught her to laugh. "Not even a little," I said. She leaned her head against mine, ears brushing my cheek like whispers of some other world. For once, the station felt less like a prison and more like the beginning of something. And in that stillness, I realized the truth. I'd joked about wanting a wife, and the stars had sent me a vampire war bride. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't laughing alone.